Welcome, everyone, to the Over Under Movies podcast, a show where we take a prominent figure of franchise in the world of filmmaking and ask a simple question: are they overrated or are they underrated? My name is DeAngelis. I am joined, as always, by my co-host. He is the Joker to my Art the Clown, Mr. Jason Gong. Jason, what's up?
Hello, Dylan. I'm sorry to say I didn't watch all of the movies we were supposed to for this one, but that's okay. I've still formed an opinion without having done the research.
That's fine.
As many people who
watching the movies is not important. It's not a prerequisite
No.
to talk about movies. It is officially spooky season, so we are talking about some horror films. We're basically just doing episodes based on like what's in theaters this October, and today we're talking about the Terrifier franchise, which is just 2 films up until Terrifier 3, which is currently in theaters. This is kind of like a new slasher franchise, which is pretty unique. We talked about it last year in our Halloween episode. Most slasher franchises are really old.
Yep.
A lot of the slasher movies that are coming out nowadays are reboots or remakes or sequels of old stuff. They're doing another Scream movie and then do another Halloween, another Friday the 13th. So this idea of Art the Clown being this new-ish slasher, it's kind of interesting. So we went back and we rewatched the films. Jason, you said that you had only watched Terrifier 2. I'm curious, having watched that film, what was like your overall thoughts of it?
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, I'm not a big slasher guy, but I understand I think I understand what slasher fans want out of a slasher movie. So there was like interesting visual violence on the screen. That's really what most of the movie was just like kills that were gory and creative. But then I did like the protagonist a lot. Sienna Shaw, I think is her name. I thought she was like a cool final girl slash a force of good to fight the evil. I thought they did some interesting things there, and I think they went with like an 80s retro feel for this movie, even though it is a relatively modern film. So I thought that was really cool as well. So there was a lot to like about it. I think we shared the same complaint that it was too long, and that a lot of movie happens without them explaining anything or without the story moving forward. And even there's some like time where they're just kind of chilling between kills and you're like, all right, let's get this movie going. So I feel like this franchise isn't necessarily for me as someone who's not that much of a slasher fan, but I had a good time watching it.
Yeah, so these movies are this is the baby of this guy named Damien Leone. He is, if you look at the credits for the Terrifier films, he's the director, he is the producer, he is the cinematographer, and he's the editor. He is the guy that does these movies, which is kind of cool. I mean, you don't see that a lot in movies generally because these are complicated roles typically on a movie set. You bring in a professional that's their whole job is to just do that one thing. And because these movies, well, these first 2 at least, are like really low budget, he's kind of had to, we're not going to pay for an editor. I'm going to edit it. And the first film, Terrifier, came out in 2016. We will note that Art the Clown kind of debuted in a series of like short films and like anthology stuff that he had worked on for the better part of like 10 years before he did Terrifier 1. So this is a character that he's been working with for better part of 20 years now almost.
Yeah.
And now it's like finally getting into the spotlight. So people might be thinking like, oh, this is kind of like sneaking up on us. This like new slasher. This is not a Halloween situation where this guy made one movie and it just like blew up completely, this character. He's really had to work for it. Terrifier 1 was a super duper low budget film. It had a budget of $35,000 to $55,000 according to Wikipedia. I know that he did an Indiegogo campaign to try to get this film financed. It did not meet its budget with the Indiegogo, and I guess he just self-financed the rest of it and released it, and he brought it to a bunch of different horror film festivals and stuff like that, and people really liked it. And it made like a modest box office return. It made like $500,000.
Yeah, pretty good.
And it made enough money for him to go and make a second one.
Right.
And the second one came out a couple years ago, and that's the one that made like decent money. And that's the one that I know like our friend John, he had watched Terrifier 2 and liked it. Like that's when people like really started catching on to the franchise, was the second one. That one had a budget of $250,000, made $15 million at the box office. $15 million solid. And that's like the whole thing that's like cool about the horror genre in general, is that it's like one of the only genres of film where you can make a super low budget movie and it'd be like pretty good, and like any sort of box office return is a win.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing something for under $1 million and you make more than $10 million, that's great. I think, you know, most horror movies that we consider successful have similar box office returns. Like Longlegs, I think, did like between 12 and 15 million maybe, but that probably had like a $5 million budget. So for something that had a $250,000 budget to do those types of numbers, it's honestly pretty incredible. And the fact that it all kind of is this one guy's vision and he's doing so many jobs on it, that's such an impressive feat.
Yeah, and from what I understand, the first movie was more than anything kind of like a practical effects reel for this guy. It's clear that special effects like blood and gore effects is his real passion, and that he's using these movies as just like a vessel for him to show off like the cool stuff that he can do with practical makeup effects. The first movie has several sequences that are just, it's just blood and gore. That's what these whole movies are, by the way. They're just blood and gore.
Right.
They're blood and gore even more so than stuff like Saw or like Final Destination, where at least those movies kind of have a plot to them on the back end. These movies really are just, it's a guy in a clown suit and he murders people. Art the Clown is a silent antagonist. He doesn't talk. He kind of smiles and like goofs around.
Yeah, he does like physical bits and comedy and stuff. And I think another thing I do like about the film is Art the Clown and the way he's played. Like, he is a lot of fun to watch.
And I forget the actor that is in the suit, but it's the same guy that's in the suit every single time.
Yeah, it's David Howard Thornton is his name, but he took over the role from Mike Gianelli, who played him in all the shorts previously. But yeah, this guy's been doing it in all the Terrifier movies.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's just one of David Leone's buddies. Again, I'm assuming he did not pay. I know I joke when we were watching it that he paid these actors with pizza on the set. None of these people in these movies are people you've ever heard of. And that's another thing that we see a lot in horror films, right, is that they don't go super big on the acting budgets. The actors in the first movie are completely irrelevant. Again, the first movie is kind of baffling. If you want a recommendation from me, at least, do not watch the first Terrifier movie because you're not going to really get much out of it. There is a recurring character named Vicky who's like the survivor of the first movie, and she comes back in the second movie a little bit. And then from what I understand, she's also in the third. We haven't seen the third one yet. She comes back a little bit in that. But she's like a survivor of an art attack. Mm-hmm. And that's all you need to know about her. But other than that, the rest of the characters are irrelevant. They're just there for him to kill them.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you like that sort of thing, I guess check it out. But I went off Dylan's recommendation and did not watch the first movie.
It's one of the most surface level plots I've ever seen in a movie, period. There's two girls that their car breaks down and they're trying to get home on Halloween, and then Art the Clown just kind of stalks them. He has no rhyme or reason, from what I understand, of like why he kills people. Mm-hmm. He just kind of goes, hey, it's some girls. I'm going to kill them. Right. And that's it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't have much to say about that because I didn't watch that movie, but it sounds like I wouldn't get a lot out of it.
But yeah, Terrifier 2 came out in 2022. That does have a plot, and it centers around, what's her name, Sienna?
Yep, Sienna Shaw.
Sienna Shaw, played by Lauren Rivera. I don't know if you've looked this up. Lauren Rivera, born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
No way.
Philly native.
That's crazy.
So that's our final girl.
I read that she got her start as Anya Taylor-Joy's stunt double on Split.
Yeah, so she's like she's a stunt person.
So she's collaborated with M. Night then. M. Night's bringing up the Philadelphia people.
Yeah, shout out to M. Night, friend of the pod. Please come on the show, M. Night.
Don't listen to our episode.
Don't listen to the episode we did on you. Just you watch the other episodes. Don't watch that one. We say nice things about you though.
Yeah.
Don't watch it. So Terrifier 2 is about this girl and her brother basically are getting stalked by Art the Clown. And there's some sort of vague thing going on with her dad, who I'm assuming their dad's dead. He has a sketchbook where he sketched a bunch of things in there, including Art the Clown. It's kind of unclear. I legitimately don't know if this was due to me not paying attention to the movie. I'm not the one that's on my phone the entire movie. That's you. Mm-hmm. I usually have a pretty good sense of the plot of these movies when we watch them. I don't think the movie really fleshes out what the dad's role was exactly.
I mean, you just need to know he died previously, and I guess he was an artist. I read that he died of a brain tumor, but I don't even know if that came up in the movie.
Yeah, so it's just this brother and the sister and their mom, who clearly the mom she's not happy about being a single parent.
No.
She's just constantly frustrated with these children. And obviously it's Halloween coming up, so Santa's making a skimpy costume for herself, even though it's kind of like a cosplay outfit. She's putting it together with like foam pieces and like airbrushing it.
Yeah, she's going hard. It's like a Valkyrie angel type of character, and it's based on one of her dad's sketches.
And so Art the Clown is kind of stalking them around the beginning of the movie. It's very similar to Halloween. I'm sure these movies in general are inspired a lot by Halloween, and the fact that Michael Myers, if you're taking the original canon of the Halloween films, where Laurie Strode is not Michael Myers' sister, and Michael Myers is just a guy that like stalks people, that's kind of what Art the Clown does as well. And so, again, this movie is just... it's just him chasing people around and killing them, sometimes very violently. There's a scene in a bedroom that's very iconic now where one of Santa's friends is giving out candy to the trick-or-treaters, and Art the Clown shows up, and she doesn't give him candy because she's like, get out of here, you creepy man. And then he breaks into her house and then just kills her, like, brutally. I guess, spoilers, Art the Clown kills people.
Yeah, and he does it, like, slowly, too. He makes sure she survives, even though it seems like he inflicts several, like, mortal wounds on her. But by the end of it, like, her skin is mostly off. She's been lit on fire, and she's still breathing through it.
He scalps her, like, her brain is exposed.
Yeah, it's gross, dude. Yeah, I didn't like watching that, but I think there are people who will like watching that.
There's a similar scene in the first movie where one of the girls is like tied up upside down, and he basically just takes a handsaw and cuts her in half. And
oh yeah,
I guess we can get a little bit in the controversy of these movies that I kind of discovered while doing research for this. You know what I'm talking about? These movies have some, not dissimilar to our podcast, some misogyny allegations.
Right.
And I gotta be honest, like, slasher movies in general are a bit misogynistic just because there's usually a lot of female characters in the movies.
Yeah.
The female characters usually die, except for one of them.
One of them gets to live at the end, usually. Yeah, I could see that. I read that there's some debate on whether Art the Clown is a misogynistic killer or an equal opportunity killer. And I think David Howard Thornton, the guy who plays him, said, like, no, he's not a misogynist. He'll kill anyone. But it does seem like these movies spend a lot more focus on, like, the torture and killing of the female characters than they do with the male characters that get killed. So I could see where those allegations are coming from, I guess.
I will say, he does kill male characters just as much. It's not like he's holding back on the guys.
Yeah, he kills the men as well. And it is still pretty violent and gross.
I don't know what the big nasty kill is from the third movie because I haven't seen it yet. It is true that the nasty kills in both of the first two movies are both a female character. So it's a thing that happens. And then he does mess up Sienna a good bit and her brother at the end of this movie. He's got this like whip that he attaches like scalpels and scissors to.
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah, he's a very sadistic slasher character. I feel like some of the other ones, they just want to kill you as brutally but quickly as possible. But this guy likes to take his time.
Yeah, he walks around with a trash bag that he always has all of his weapons in.
Yeah.
And other assorted items.
Oh, he also has a gun.
He also has a gun, which is the biggest plot twist of the first movie that I'm spoiling for you now, is that the one girl starts fighting back against him, and you think, oh, she's beating his ass right now. And then he shoots her with a gun. And I went, what? That's illegal. I can't think of in my head of another slasher that uses guns.
Right, because they're slashers.
Because they're slashers.
They use weapons that slash.
They're not the Terminator, referencing the poster that's behind you there.
Right.
Because that's what it become. You'd become the Terminator at that point.
Yeah.
If he had guns. But yeah, he just starts shooting her. And I'm like, that's cheating.
So you don't like that he uses a gun?
I don't, no.
I think it is a good gag, I guess. Just the fact that he uses guns and it comes as a surprise in that first one is kind of funny. And, you know, it is more modern, I guess, if this is our modern slasher character. But it's definitely something that makes it stand out.
But the end of the second Terrifier movie kind of gets into some, like, supernatural elements, which is something that I'm always curious about in slasher movies, is the slasher just a guy? Or is it some sort of demon thing that is immortal and you can't kill him? And he's the second thing. He's basically unkillable.
Yeah, so it seems, from what I've read, the interpretation is like he might have been just a guy in the first one, but then he gets brought back by the little pale girl in the second one, who is another creepy clown, except this one's like a small child. Apparently she brings him back and gifts him with like more supernatural abilities.
Another thing that it's just not explained.
It's not explained at all.
A lot of these movies are just totally up for our interpretation.
Yeah, but every summary I've read says that that's how he comes back, is that this other character is who's bringing him back. Maybe they explain it in the third one.
Because there's an entire like dream sequence in the second one that's clearly inspired by
like Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, Freddy Krueger and Nightmare on Elm Street stuff. It's never established that art haunts people in their dreams. If that's what's exactly happening here.
Yeah, it seems like Art and Sienna just have some sort of psychic connection, or like I think there's a prophecy maybe, but there's some connection between the two, and it's not really explained.
But at the end of the second one, she beheads him and escapes with her brother. And then the woman from the first movie, Vicky, she's in an insane asylum, and she starts splattering blood all over the walls of her place, and then gives birth to an Art the Clown head. That's in a post-credit scene that we almost missed it.
Right, yeah.
Because Amazon, they just immediately start cutting to the next thing they want you to see.
But I saw there's like so much time left in the credits, and I was like, there's no way there's 16 minutes worth of credits. And then we watched the longest post-credit scene I've ever seen. It was like just another scene from the movie.
And speaking of length, we got to talk about the most indefensible part of this entire movie.
It's, what was it, 2 hours, 18 minutes?
Yeah, it's 138 minutes. It is as long as Megalopolis. It has an identical runtime as Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis.
And which one did you like more? Which one did you enjoy watching more?
Listen, I'm gonna go to bat for Megalopolis. I think every person that I've talked to since I've watched that movie, I've gone, you kind of need to see it.
Yeah,
I swing more on the side of go see it, especially since it's probably not in a lot of theaters anymore at this point.
But it's gonna outlast Joker 2 in some theaters.
Oh my god, yeah! Terrifier 3 beat Joker 2 this weekend at the box
crazy.
office.
Yeah, I saw a tweet today. It said that the guy who plays Art the Clown, David Howard Thornton, early in his career, he was doing like fan videos of the Joker. He was playing the Joker in fan films. That's kind of one of his early starts. And now he gets to be a clown in a movie that beat the Joker this weekend. So good on him.
Good for him. But yeah, this movie's way too long, the second one. The first one, I think, is something like 86 minutes. It's under 90 minutes.
So under 90, and then doing a jump to over 2 hours.
It's just too long. It cut out a couple of the kill scenes, man. You'll save 50 grand of your budget. You'll save all that blood that you had to buy,
which is 20% of your budget. Yeah, it should have been a shorter movie. Absolutely.
There's an entire sequence at the beginning of the movie that takes place at a school, which I'm sure when it comes to getting permits and stuff like that, it's a whole nother headache having to like shoot in a school and having a bunch of underage actors that you have to.
That's true. Yeah.
Like pay attention to. You can just cut all that out. It's not important to the movie.
Yep, cut that. I think the dream sequence could have been shorter. I did like the sequence, but at one point I was like, is this still a dream, or is the movie just continuing?
Yeah, because it goes on forever.
Yeah, and then like the final confrontation between Sienna and Art the Clown, she like beats him and escapes like 3 times in a row, and then finally he kills her, but then she comes back to life and then finally kills him for real. But it's like so many fake out endings.
It's a side effect
on top of each other.
The guy who has the creative vision for the film is that both the director
and the editor,
and he's the producer
and the writer.
So there's nobody to tell this guy no.
Right.
Whatever he wants to do, he's in the movie. So it's kind of like Megalopolis and that.
Yeah, that's true. This guy.
Him and Francis Ford Coppola, very similar movie directors, I would say.
And in this case, like the studio could interfere if they wanted, but they don't care because they only spent $250,000 on it. So they're like, we'll let you do whatever you want.
I think the third one had a decent budget. The third one's budget is $2 million.
Yeah, and I like to think that kind of goes just towards paying like the talent that worked hard on the first 2 films. No, it's not like they're buying $1.5 million more worth of blood or anything like that. I'm sure the practical effects cost about the same.
I'm sure he's got all that stuff sitting around somewhere.
Yeah,
anyway.
And now this is just like paying out the actual people behind the movies, which is nice.
So I guess we could talk a little bit here before we get into the objective score. Like, what makes a good slasher movie, do you think? How important is the plot? How important are the kills? How important is just the story structure.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, like on the Halloween episode.
Yeah, you're in a cowboy accent the entire episode for anybody that wants to go back and listen to that.
Yeah, we should be in costume now. So that episode, we said, like, I think I complained about the lack of plot in Halloween. Like, I like my movies to have plot. I think you do too. So I like when these slasher movies have plots. I think that's why of all of like the big three, Jason, Freddy, and Halloween, I like Freddy's the best. I think he has an interesting backstory. And then Jason at least has a backstory. But that first Halloween movie, there's like no backstory. I mean, there is a backstory to the guy, but there's really not much plot to it. So I like having a plot, but I think that what most people expect is to just get scared and see interesting kills. And this movie definitely delivers on those fronts.
Yeah, if we're talking about the thing that makes these films unique is that, well, one, it's practical. Everything's in camera, the deaths and the blood and everything. It's kind of unsettling, especially since it's clearly not like a super duper expensive rig that they're using as well. So it's got that low budget, almost like 80s, 70s feel to it a little bit. But I do think there is a balance that you need to hit for these type of low budget horror films where you need to have a plot, but it does not need to be super complicated. The second you start making it any level of complicated, it kind of ruins it a little bit, because slasher films are really simple. You introduce a cast of characters and some things go wrong for them and they're trying to get out of their situation and they run into a problem, and that problem is the slasher, and then they all die except for one person, and one person gets out of there. Spoilers, we watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre last night, the original from 1974. That's the plot of Texas Chainsaw Massacre that I just explained there. And it works perfectly in that movie. That movie is like 86 minutes long.
And that's like the first one too, right? That came out before Halloween.
Yeah, and it's great. The pacing is really good. You could argue that that movie lacks plot for most of it. You can argue that it's a little slow. It's super duper low budget. Also, it has a prominent main character that's in a wheelchair, which I thought was hilarious. It was my first time seeing that movie.
Yeah, I think that movie's cool because there's like a lot of unsettling things even before the Texas Chainsaw Man starts massacring people. Yeah, like it's just creepy the whole time, and it's got this like gothic Americana look to it. These Terrifier movies, I don't think are that unsettling outside of just
I think that's the one thing that's missing from the Terrifier movies is vibes.
Yeah,
I don't think it's very atmospheric. It doesn't have a specific identity to it outside of just art.
I do think it had almost like a cool 80s vibes. Like they used synth music, which I thought was cool. They had like, you know, purple neon signs backlighting some things. And yeah, it had this retro feel to it that I liked, but I kind of wish they leaned further in that direction. Because you're right, there were scenes that just felt kind of like flat and sterile.
Yeah, there's part of me that I almost wish that he would just do the Stranger Things thing and just have these movies be set in the 80s.
Yeah, I think he can. I like the idea that he just sets it in modern times, but like makes it feel more like Stranger Things, which I think is what he was going for, but didn't fully commit to because he had to spend more money on the blood and gore.
And also, yeah, he can't go through the effort of making everything look like the 80s perfectly accurate. The first movie, it's so simple. It's just two women like walking down a sidewalk, and then they go to a random pizza place, and they sit in that pizza place for a solid 25 minutes while Art the Clown is just like staring at them from another table.
Yeah, that sounds boring.
And so I really appreciate whenever I see a director kind of make it like this and stick with a single character and a single story. And then finally, it seems like Terrifier 2 really worked for him. And then Terrifier 3 is like kind of what's putting it like really on the map now. It seems like it's going to make decent money in its theatrical run here. I'm curious like how many movies he's going to end up making out of this.
Yeah.
I was looking at that guy's filmography. He only does this.
Yeah, he made his short films, anthology films, and then the Terrifier movies. It's interesting whether a studio will like tap him for an IP or something.
Imagine like, yeah, this guy's 42 years old. He's been doing movies for 20 plus years. He's only done Art the Clown. This guy has had a singular focus on just this character.
But the success has been like exponential. I'm sure his anthology films, he was like, all right, I'll make this for $10,000. And he was like, I can't believe I made $18,000 back on this. and now he's making a movie for $2 million that might do like $20 million or something.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I don't know. Do you have any interest in seeing him like take on an IP, and what IP would that be?
It's tough to say. It would have to be something that shows off his skills with practical effects. So if they ever did The Thing again or something like that, or if they did Reanimators, like The Fly or something like that.
Yeah, I guess it would be cool to see him take on like body horror and see if he can keep the same magic of that practical effects thing without it being like gore heavy and it's just body weirdness instead. I think that's a good pick.
It's really tricky because we've seen both ends of this. We've seen the cautionary tales of giving a small budget director a big budget movie, and then sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, or it's like a Waititi's case. He makes a good one and then he becomes a monster on his own.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, he's really a litmus test now for when we talk about directors. And every time we're like, as long as they don't go down the Taika Waititi route, they'll be okay.
Yeah, don't be giving Damien Leone Doctor Strange 3.
No, that would be crazy. Like, I'm thinking, like, would you give him, like, the keys to the Halloween franchise now that the last group is done with it? Or would you give him Scream? Like, stuff like that. Would you give him an established slasher franchise because you like or because people like the Terrifier movies?
What would be cool would be a crossover film between Art the Clown and like Freddy Krueger or something like that.
That would be cool. Yeah, I wish that Freddy versus Jason had done better numbers so that we could just get more of that bullshit.
Constant crossovers.
Yeah, I love crossovers. I'm like a simple man raised on comic books. I think movie crossovers are fun.
You see two characters from different franchises,
and I'm like,
you're like,
oh boy,
I don't care if it's bad.
I really don't. I had a great time with Freddy versus Jason. Yeah, I think it's interesting. So Terrifier 4 is greenlit, I believe. So he's not going anywhere anytime soon. He's going to stick with this franchise. And it seems like that's what he loves to do. I don't think he would be good for like Scream because I don't think the gore and the practical effects are what make that movie. But I think he could be good for Saw or a reinvention of like Freddy Krueger or the Halloween films.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear that this guy in an ideal world is just a makeup supervisor on some big franchise or big movie or something like that. But clearly he's a guy that he wants the keys to the car. And so he's just going to keep sticking out with Terrifier films for now, which is, you know, respect to him.
Yeah, there's definitely a secret sauce to these films because they are doing more and more money every single time.
Anyway, we can get into the objective scoring here for the Terrifier films. I think the third one has like a 90+% on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that right now.
That's crazy.
Which is, I don't know, they're kind of grading on a curve a little bit.
I think so too. I think they're happy about the like underdog story as well. We're all rooting for the guy, so now we're going to classify these things as high art.
Which they're not. This is like horror gore schlock.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's making these movies to be particularly serious.
Right. And he's getting some points for being like unapologetic about that, I guess. But yeah, on Letterboxd, the first Terrifier has a 2.4 stars, which is relatively on the lower end. And Terrifier 2 has 2.8. So yeah, also not that high.
So we'll say 2.6 for these two films since we're judging
the average of the two, yeah.
Which is almost a 5 out of 10. So the overrated, underrated is just, do you think it's above a 5 or below a 5? Which is interesting. Jason, Terrifier films, what is the argument for them being underrated?
Well, it's a lot of the stuff we've covered already. It's one guy's vision, basically, and then he found the collaborators that he likes working with. You know, he's kept the same clown the whole time. Art has a very specific physicality to him that I think makes him already feel like part of the horror movie character canon. This guy feels like he's been established for a long time. I feel like he could pop up in Mortal Kombat 12 whenever that comes out.
This guy get a Fortnite skin.
Yeah, exactly. This franchise kind of came out of nowhere. You probably hadn't. I hadn't heard of Terrifier before Terrifier 2 came out. Had you?
Yeah, Terrifier 2 was when I first.
Yeah, so no one had. This thing crept up on us, and then suddenly it was a success. That was what, 2022 it came out?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
That was big year for horror movies. That was a great year for horror movies. That was Barbarian, Smile, and Terrifier 2 all in one October season. It's part of this like sort of like throwback to old school horror movies. You know, horror today is a lot of like social commentary, or like the horror is a metaphor for trauma. So like with the Babadook and Get Out and stuff like that, there's always something a little more cerebral going on. But with this Terrifier movie, we get like a classic slasher of like the old days. You know, the slashers kind of peaked in the 80s, but now it feels like they're back because of this. It breathed new life into really what was a dying genre of film, and it amped up what people like about it: the blood, the gore, the creativeness of the kills. It did that bigger and arguably better than people had done it before, even in the classics that people love. So it's just, it kind of came out of nowhere, and in some ways it was awesome, or people think it's awesome. These movies are not for me, but I'm arguing that it's underrated. But like, it really did just kind of like, bam, this is like, horror is back, slashers are back, and it's Art the Clown, baby, and now he's a bigger clown than the Joker.
Yeah, I do agree. We talked about it last year when we did the Halloween pod of who are the recent slashers,
and we couldn't think of any because we hadn't watched this movie.
We were talking about like Jeepers Creepers.
Yeah,
those 20 years ago.
Yeah,
and the most recent one is Scream. Like the recent like actual one is Scream, which came out in what, 96?
The 90s, yeah.
Shout out to our Scream podcast we did with our friends at the Baked Beans podcast.
Beans, yeah.
And again, Scream's like as old as we are. It's an old franchise at this point.
Yeah, so this really is like the only new slasher franchise that has popped out and actually made a splash. But at the same time, I think it is still kind of only within like film bro circles that people have heard of this. Film bro circles and like hardcore horror movie circles. But I think the general population still doesn't know what these movies are. And they might get a kick out of them. Or if they just want to be really freaked out, then this is the movie for them.
Yeah, I saw the box office headlines this week were like, oh my God, it beat Joker 2 at the box office. It made like $15 million or something like that, which is good. It's good for a low-budget horror film.
15 million, that's like as much as the second one made in its entire run.
Yeah,
right?
in a vacuum, though, $15 million is like, it's fine.
Well, for $2 million, yeah, in a vacuum, I guess. But this isn't a vacuum. You got to compare it to like its budget.
For a slasher film that released in the second week of October, this is the time to release this movie, which good on them for releasing this in October, because sometimes they don't do that. I don't know why.
I know. But yeah, this guy had a vision and he nailed it so that it was successful. And then it's only gotten better over time, it seems like. Like the critical ratings have been going up. Maybe not on Letterboxd, but on Rotten Tomatoes, there's a jump every time. So yeah, they're just good movies that, from 2 onward, they're good movies that make a splash and that more people should check out if they really want to get in the Halloween spirit.
For the overrated argument, though, I gotta say, I've kind of beaten around the bush a little bit here, and maybe you can back me up on this. We'll see. These movies kind of aren't very good. I haven't talked about this exactly a lot. I gave the first one a 1 star. I gave the second one, I think, 1.5 or 2 stars.
Yeah.
I think generally speaking, these are not good movies. I think we really are grading them on a curve of like, hey, we haven't seen a new slasher in a while. This is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. But in reality, again, no plot, like nothing. Fucking zero in the first movie. The second movie has a little bit of plot, but I need to know at bare minimum, what is the backstory for the killer? What is his motivation? Why specifically is he targeting the people that he's targeting? Why should I care about any of this? There needs to be some level of stakes involved. If I just want to watch a movie about somebody killing somebody, I don't know, man. I'll just look up kill montages on YouTube. You're making a movie. The movie should have a plot to it. I don't want to see women getting cut up. I'm sure there are other websites I can go to watch women getting chopped up with handsaws. I don't know. Let me know, people in the comments, what are some of your favorite websites to see women getting brutalized? Because that's why people call these movies misogynistic, is because when you take away the little plot that's there, it's just a guy like really brutally murdering women and some men as well.
Some men.
One of the guys was a black guy in the second one.
Yeah. that was one of the only male kills.
Yeah, that poor guy he was working at like a Spirit Halloween.
Yeah, and he was like, he was doing his job. He was protecting the women in the store too, and then he got killed for it.
This is what you get for being an ally.
Yeah, wow.
That's some real social commentary right there. I just think that these movies are getting a little bit overhyped because this is just something we don't see very often.
Yeah, I mean, I think the audience for these movies don't care about plot as much, and to them, you know, seeing these really horrific kills is like a roller coaster ride, and they're getting their adrenaline spike from it. So I think the director is delivering on his promise to the audience. So I can't really fault the movies too much for lack of plot. Also, I like that the hero from the second one got a sword.
She doesn't have a sword.
She has a magic sword. I was reading about, like, the way he talks about the writing of these movies, it sounds like he thinks he wrote a better movie than it is. Because he's like, well, I really wanted Sienna to be like a true symbol of the forces of good, and for Art the Clown to really symbolize the forces of evil in a biblical way. I'm like, what is he talking about?
I gave her a sword.
So he gave her angel wings and a sword.
Angel wings that she bought at a Spirit Halloween.
Right, but she also comes back to life at one point in this movie, and that's
like an angel.
It's like, it is a biblical thing. He was like, you know, just like Christ, my character, he comes back to life.
I fucking love movie directors, man.
Yeah, because I mean,
what's it? Yeah, what do you want him to say?
Yeah,
do you want him to say like I just want to make like bloody shit?
I think, as like, whenever I do a creative thing too, like, I'm like, yeah, here's my thought process behind it, blah 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 blah. It was really deep. Here's how I thought about it, even if it's like the dumbest thing in the world.
At least 40% is bullshit.
Yeah,
it's a part of being a creative person.
I can't fault him for it, you know. And I think Sienna was a cool and memorable final girl protagonist. And I think Art the Clown is a cool symbol for the forces of darkness or whatever. So I don't think I'd necessarily agree that these are bad movies.
Also, it's also a side effect of the fact that horror is a genre that people make a lot of low budget stuff in the horror genre. Because of that, there's just a lot of shit out there, a lot of really bad stuff. Most of what I know from low budget horror, frankly though, is from watching regular media stuff. Mm-hmm. Those guys, they fight the good fight watching low budget horror movies that random people send to their PO box. And it's bad. I mean, there's just a lot of really, really, really bad stuff out there that is low effort, and it's just rubber Halloween costumes and bad lighting and bad editing. So when you see something like the first Terrifier movie that's like, this is kind of competent, this is watchable even, it's like revolutionary.
Yeah, it gets graded on a curve a little bit. But the second one, you know, I think it had relatively good editing, good lighting, good acting from most of the actors. The second one is just like, yeah, a perfectly fine movie. I gave it 3 stars out of 5, so that's like pretty much as average as you can go. I thought it was decent, you know. I don't really like all the blood and gore, so I don't know if I'm going to see the third one, but I thought there was enough story in Terrifier 2 that I could pay attention.
But I will say, for anyone curious, like, that's listening to this podcast and hasn't seen the Terrifier films, you're like, should I go watch these? If you're somebody that likes slasher movies, if you like blood and gore, definitely go see it. But just like temper your expectations a little bit, because the way that some people on the internet talk about these movies is that there's some sort of revolutionary like next step in horror or something like that,
yeah,
or like Clown's the next big thing, or
instant classic.
This is the scariest movie of the year. These movies aren't scary. No. They're not scary.
No, there's not even that many like good jump scares. Honestly, it's just violent.
It's just blood and gore. If you like blood and gore, go watch the movie, and you're going to get blood and gore. You're going to get exactly what you want out of it, but that's it. Come with no other expectations. If you want to see a woman who, what is she on, like ecstasy or something like that? She gets drugged in the middle of this movie by her friend.
Right. Yeah, Sienna, she gets, I think it's ecstasy or Molly or something.
So like we had extra budget for a Molly sequence in the middle of this. That's how you get a 2.5 hour long movie, is that you put stuff like that in there. Get back to the kills, bro.
Yep.
Anyway, that's Terrifier. Go see the third one in the theaters if you want to see some blood and gore. And that's it. Happy Halloween.
Yeah, happy Halloween. And we'll be wishing you a happy Halloween for our next 3 episodes, probably.
Do you have your Halloween costume for this year figured out yet?
No, do you?
Oh, absolutely not. Luckily, we have a pretty big Spirit Halloween that opens up down the street from us here in Philly. So I might just like walk around there one day and see what they got. See if they have Art the Clown costumes.
It's probably the easiest move this year. I think it'll be a low effort year for me. I went as Ned Flanders last year, so I had to paint my body yellow and wear a mustache. Yeah, it was like a whole thing. And then, you know me, I sweat really easily, so I kept sweating off the yellow paint. Never again, dude. Never again. And sweating off the mustache, too. Just like the whole costume is gone. Yeah. So this year, just something light.
Something breathable.
Yeah, something breathable. No face paint. Yeah. And let us know in the comments, what are you going to be for Halloween and what are you doing for Halloween?
Yeah, give us some ideas. We have a Halloween party in a few weeks here, so we got to get on it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's going to be it for this episode of the Over Under Movies podcast. Thanks everyone for listening. Jason, thanks for coming on the pod again. As always, check us out on Patreon, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, all those good places. Hit us up on Patreon and get your name in the credits. We also have a free tier on Patreon. You can see all of our updates for when we're recording stuff. I've been getting better at posting on the Patreon lately because I do all of our back-end stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan.
I have all the passwords. So feel free to say hi to us. Join our Discord if you want to come talk about movies. Let us know what you're watching. Like I said, we were watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We watched the first one and the second one last night. The second one is literally just a comedy, which is hilarious.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I didn't watch these movies last night.
The second we're going to have to do Texas Chainsaw Massacre eventually on this podcast.
We'll do it next year.
Because it's another franchise that the continuity is just fucked. There's 3 different movies that are called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the franchise.
Yeah.
And then there's one called Texas Chainsaw 3D. It's just the most 2000s awesome thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah. When we do our Saw episode, maybe we should just watch Saw and Saw 3D and skip everything in between.
Yeah. Get our 3D glasses out.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks everyone for listening to this episode of the Over Under Movies podcast. We will see you at the movies.
Bye.
Later.